tropes. We know them, we love them, or maybe we hate them. We love to hate them. It's time for another talk about tropes. Tropes have become so ingrained in commercial fiction these days that it's easy to forget that there was a time. I remember when we didn't really have tropes in the same way that we have them today. Of course they existed. People just naturally gravitate toward certain fantasies that make up the bedrock of what becomes a trope. But let me tell you kids, it used to be genuinely difficult to scratch that itch. When me and my sister Kate were tweens, teens, we were at that age where we wanted books that had a good romance in them. A romance that would appeal to us at that age. And every time we went to the library, we would be scouring the description of books, trying to parse out whether there was a romance in this book that we were going to like. They didn't put it front and center of fantasy or even young adult such as it existed back then. I would be going through the fantasy, the historical fiction, the older side of the kids' books. The teen section was just one little carousel, and most of it was those romances where the girl's just wearing a big 80s sweater and she has a drug addiction, the problem novel. That was most of the young adult section. So we were just always looking for a book that would give us what we wanted, and it was like a unicorn when you found one. Nowadays, you have more shadow daddies than you can shake a magical staff at, but back then, I remember the point where I found Raceland Magir in the Dragonlance Chronicles was I thought that Raceland was so smoking hot, and the main reason was because there was just nothing else. It was finding an oasis in the desert when you're starving and you see a shimmering image of Raceland and you're just okay, I'll take him. Nowadays, I think we could do better than Raceland. No hate to Raceland, though, if I have any hardcore Raceland fans out there. I just feel looking back, I think we have a wider range of options now. He probably wouldn't have been my first choice. Side note to the Raceland thing, this has nothing to do with this video, but when I was a teenager at one point, I was looking at our local paper, and they always have the baby name announcements, and usually I wouldn't read those because what would be the point of that except to look for character names once in a while. But on this very random day, I decided I was going to see what the baby names were for that week. And one of the babies was named Raceland. And I've never forgotten this baby named Raceland. And I've always wondered his fate. So if you were a baby named Raceland that was born in Orlando in the 1990s and you happen to be watching this video, let me know. How did that go for you? Having a name that kind of sounds like Raisin, but is also the name of one of the OG Shadow Daddy sorcerers. If you're not familiar with Raceland, by the way, in the Dragonlance Chronicles, he had a brother who was a standard warrior, and he was the dark sorcerer guy, and his eyes, his pupils look like little hourglasses, and whenever he would look at people, he would see them dying and crumbling to dust or something like that. So that was the state of the options we had for brooding sorcerers in the 1990s. So it used to be really hard to discover the tropes that you wanted to read. You had to really dig. You had to scour libraries and bookstores and book reviews trying to figure out if this book was going to have the thing that you wanted. Nowadays, not only do we have every author making a trope map that tells you exactly what you're going to get in the book, but we also have entire genres like isekai where the whole title tells you what you're going to get. It is not at all hard to find what you're looking for anymore. It's everywhere. There's an abundance of everything that you could possibly want when it comes to tropes. And there is a ton of benefit to this. I don't want to disparage the trope entirely here, or, it's a double-edged sword, the trope, because I do remember those days when it was just so hard to find the books that I was looking for. There were no hashtags at the library. I couldn't even tell, is this book going to be a romance at all? Is it going to end up being tragic? Is it going to be more of a cozy tone? Is it going to be more of a dark tone? It was often pretty hard to tell, like, what you were getting at all. You had a description, but as I know from personal experience, sometimes the publisher description is not even that great. It's kind of like a movie trailer. Sometimes the movie trailer really tells you what you're going to get, and sometimes the movie trailer is so off, and the book description is kind of like that too, because sometimes the editor or the marketing department who wrote the blurb for the book decides that some certain element is going to be marketable, and maybe it's not even really the part that readers really respond to. It might even end up being slightly misleading as to what the main plot or tone is going to be. You just never know. And it's so much easier to sell a book to people when it's really easy to tell them what you're selling. I've had a whole video that was specifically about how difficult it is to sell people a thing that they want if it has not been named yet. So as soon as a genre gets like a name or a trope gets a name, then it becomes easier to sell it in general. Like if you had a cozy fantasy before people had the term cozy fantasy, it was very hard to sell. Now suddenly, like, wow, it's really easy to sell cozy fantasy. Look at that. All we needed was a name that all readers can universally recognize and go, oh yeah, I want that. The more that you have to explain to people what this book is, the harder it is to sell to them, even if it's something that they might really, really want to read. So nowadays, the blurb, the pitch, that is still important to selling books. I mean, readers definitely do read those, and you want to have a really good one. But the trope map, the tropes that you're presenting are often now just as important as the actual description of the story, and you can pitch your book based entirely just on a list of the tropes that it has. So this can become a problem for those of us who did not write a book with the tropes in mind. A lot of authors now kind of consider what trope a book is going to have before they even write the book. Like when I wrote Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy, I kind of knew I was going to go for the grumpy sunshine trope because the female main character already existed and I already knew she was kind of a sunshine character. And I could very easily imagine her falling for a grumpy guy. So that all just kind of came together very organically, and it felt like, okay, great. I have this trope already baked into where my brain wants to go. But when I have to sit down and look at my idea and go, what tropes does it have? And it doesn't inherently have tropes, it can become very hard for me. Last fall, I released my book, Wanted Brooding Man Tragic Past, which was a cozy fantasy. And the guy in the book, I was like, is he like a cinnamon roll? Is he like a golden retriever? What are we calling him? I think he's a cinnamon roll. But at the same time, I hate that. I don't want to call my character a cinnamon roll. Like, he's more complicated than that to me. Like, he's just a person. I feel like as soon as you call someone a cinnamon roll, then they have to become a certain thing and they're not allowed to be un-cinnamon roll-like. And that might not even be true because a lot of times you can tell readers that a thing is a thing, and as long as it's like 75% the thing, that's enough. Nevertheless, it gets in your head. The character is no longer Vari. He becomes the cinnamon roll trope more than he is the full-fledged person that my brain imagined. So I tried to do a little bit of marketing where I said, like, this has the cinnamon roll trope, but my brain was just like, I hate it. I don't want to call him a cinnamon roll. It feels condescending. I also have kind of an accidental shadow daddy. I haven't written his book yet, but he does appear in The Sorcerer's Equal. Dormangara, he's kind of the Grim Reaper-ish figure of my fantasy world, and he hits a lot of the shadow daddy notes. He's brooding, he's stoic and somber, he's super powerful, he has mysterious ancient death powers, he can talk to the dead, you know, he's all the things that you would want in a shadow daddy, kind of. But when I think of calling my Dormangara, a shadow daddy, I just get like a full body cringe. Like he would, as much as Vari would probably be puzzled by being called a cinnamon roll, I think he would kind of be like, oh, that's nice. Dormangara would hate being a shadow daddy, which is also a very shadow daddy-ish way of thinking, isn't it? but nevertheless, I respect him, and I don't want to. Like, this is beneath his dignity. And also, like many of my characters underneath that, he's kind of a dork. So then I'm like, does he fully fulfill the shadow daddy thing? This is where I start, like, as soon as you assign the trope, then you start angsting over whether, like, is it fulfilling the trope? Like, if I take him in this direction, is he not shadow daddying hard enough anymore? So then this would start to feel like it demands shadow daddy research rather than just writing the character the way that he wants to naturally evolve. If I start thinking about this too much, I'm like, oh, I better look into, like, all the expectations for shadow daddies. I better read other books about shadow daddies that are popular and see how their shadow daddy lives unfold. And I really hate that I'm even saying the word shadow daddy this many times. And indeed, that is often what happens. A lot of authors are researching exactly what the reader wants in a trope, and they're making a little checklist, and they're trying to make sure that their book hits a lot of the tropes on the checklist. This ensures that this will be a shadow daddy for the masses, a shadow daddy that pleases all fans of shadow daddies. But there will be no surprises, or very few surprises in this character, because the trope practically demands that you don't give the reader a real surprise. You know, you could do a reveal like, oh my God, his mother is actually the moon goddess, but, you know, it will be within the bounds of something that fits the trope anyway. Whereas my first encounter with the shadow daddy-ish kind of guy in Raceland was like a surprise. It was like what is this? What is this? Do I like it? I think I do like it. And that element of surprise and discovery of something that tickled my teenage fancies was very exciting. I also had the experience as a teenager of discovering Howl's Moving Castle on the young adult shelf among all of those books with the girls in their sweaters and their drug problems. That was another book that was like, wow, what a wondrous surprise. It took so many years for Howl. Well, it took a Miyazaki movie for one thing, I believe, but it took a lot of years for Howl to become kind of a character that we've seen other Howls now, although I still say I could have a few more Howls out there. So while I don't necessarily wish for a return to the days where I sometimes could go a whole year without finding a book that had the things I wanted in it, now it's almost tipped too far the other way. There's so many books that have these tropes that it's just boring because they no longer feel innovative or surprising. Discovering them is no longer exciting. It always feels like if I pick up one of these books, I'm going to get exactly what I expect and no surprises whatsoever. When I do find those books that still surprise me, it's so fantastic. And it probably remains just as rare to find a book that really delights me as it did back in the day, because we went from having almost no books that had the tropes I wanted to just having these very unimaginative versions of them. So the trope-based marketing leads to pleasing the mass audience, but it also tends to kill innovation because authors become hesitant to introduce too many things to a book that don't have a label they can put on the trope map. Is there anything to be done about this? I mean, who knows where it's all going? I certainly could never have foreseen when I was a teenager that someday there would be hashtags and trope maps and a big boom first in young adult and then in indie publishing and in fantasy romance, that cozy fantasy would become a thing. A lot of the things I would have been so into when I was younger are now massive, but I think my teenage self still might have eventually craved something unique. How do we balance these two things? Is it possible we could come to some kind of happy medium between not enough tropes and too many tropes? In some ways, I wonder if the answer is actually not less tropes, but more tropes. The more names we have for things, the more variations we can introduce. But on the other hand, that poses the same problem I mentioned earlier, where you become afraid to call someone a cinnamon roll, for example, and then let the character do something un-cinnamon roll-like. Like if I call Vari a cinnamon roll, he can't kill anyone later, which I have no plans for Vari to ever kill anyone. And he would be so horrified if he did. But you know, what if I wrote a book about him years later and he ended up having to kill someone? I don't know. I just don't like boxing him in that way. As authors, we can try our best to keep marketing our quirks and kind of make that part of the marketing. That's what I've been trying to do with the potion dealers. I've been making these little TikTok videos and Instagram reels where I try to highlight what's unique about the book rather than trying to lean into the tropes of it, of which there are very few for me to use in the first place. So my best tactic with that one is just to highlight some of the fresh elements that I think people might like. As much as I hate to think about where AI is going, perhaps AI could help with more personalized recommendations, that people could ask for more specific things and fine tune out of like the trope map and into just asking for more specific things. I don't know. But on the other hand, I could also see the rise of AI leading to people really leaning more toward personalized recommendations from, you know, booktubers and bookstagram people, you know, book community influencers, and really wanting the personal stamp of approval on a book to help filter out the slop. So as with all my videos where I talk about where all this is going, I don't know, because I could see it going several different ways, and I am definitely not good at predicting the future. In the meantime, I'm back to writing my weird little books, and hopefully somebody likes them. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on the tropes, the trope maps. As a writer, how much do you worry about writing to tropes and making sure that you incorporate enough of them for your book to be marketable? And as a reader, do you like the trope map? Are you getting a little burned out on the cookie cutter nature of writing nowadays? And of course, a hello to all my fellow Dragonlance fans from back in the day. One of the ways that I knew that Dade was the guy for me is when I saw paperwork from his youth where he was using Raceland as an alias. It was that and the fact that he owned the Secret of Nim soundtrack. If you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove and I am a fantasy author. I've been a full-time creative since 2009, and on this channel I talk about the creative life in general, the emotional, practical, financial side, as well as the writing and bookish world in particular. So if that sounds good to you, I hope you'll stick around. If you'd like more from me, I have memberships that get 2 bonus videos per month voted on by you guys, and access to my Discord server where we have a very nice little creative community. You can access that through YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Substack, and you might want to join my Substack anyway, because I do have a lot of free content on there as well. If you'd like to read any of my books, I always recommend the Hidden Lands books. Those are the ones I talk about, the ones that are really me, but I have a lot of paranormal and fantasy romances as well. I post every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesdays. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, especially to my members who support this channel, and I will see you next time. Bye!